with SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about PLM. And actually, I'll let Eddie pronounce his last name because I'm not going to butcher it. But Eddie will be presenting. So without further ado, here is Eddie.
Thanks, Brian, and thank you everybody for attending. What we're going to talk about today is what PLM is, how it can help your organization. We're going to walk through the webtech PLM system, and then towards the end we'll go through some quick case studies and then some time for questions. So to get started, there are a few different takes on what PLM really is. Product lifecycle management typically means from the very beginning of the development of a product. It can be anywhere from just the meeting phase where you're talking about what types of products you need to develop to even competitive analysis, and that stage through development, whether it be creating bills of materials, going out and sourcing subcomponents, putting together product sheets, and the entire process up and through production, where an ERP system would take over at that point. So typically in an organization, there are a lot of processes that are happening simultaneously in this phase, and before there were systems to really capture that entire process, it'd be just kind of a fire drill to get through all of the individual tasks, make sure that everybody is in touch with each other as far as what needs to be completed and when, and maybe be managed on an Excel spreadsheet or some type of a shared folder where people would drop their files and updates. That works in a very small environment, and in today's environment, there are a lot of situations where that just won't work. For example, you've got multiple teams in different locations that need to be on the same page. Really creates an issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the original webtech system, how it was developed, what business need it solved, and then bring up to today's day where we are and what the challenges of today are. So going back to 1999, we were working with Gillette back-to-order business, and with Gillette, it was a very surprising scenario. They've got manufacturing facilities across the world, and you would think the last thing that they would really need would be a PLM system. As far as R&D and keeping their design teams in sync, maybe not such a big issue. And one or two new razors are developed per year, and more or less a staple type business. But in fact, what's happening is we're demanding more and more promotions to try and sell their products. So while they may have razors and shavers and open stock galore, what they didn't necessarily have was the specific display vehicle that the retailer was going to require at the location the retailer required it. So going back to 1999, what Gillette had determined was they wanted to make a commitment to all their top customers that, regardless of what they would order, it could be packed in packaging, and Gillette would have to deliver that in 10 days. What thing, and you don't know who's going to be in the World Series yet, or think Super Bowl or any type of sporting event, or even if it was a new product launch and you've got different languages and different package, really pose a challenge to make sure that everybody, everyone knows what change is and is able to react to it in time to track those changes. At the time, there was no real PLM. The PDM systems product development systems were about all that was available, and we needed to really extend that out. So while Gillette already had a PDM system, what it wasn't capable of doing was getting these notifications over to the individuals that needed to know instantly. And then not only that, but also moving files across the globe. So if, for example, an engineering change was made in Boston, we needed to get that instantly to their 7 distribution centers in North America so that they could start printing and change over their packaging. So there wasn't really a lot of time to wait for a nightly batch or for somebody to pull a report or for somebody to send out emails. This had to be real-time communication with the teams. It had to be automated, and that's what we developed. Going through '99 until 2005, the system was in use in Gillette, and again, you can see from this next slide, we had to deliver in 10 days or less, but there were other conditions as well. This was a mission critical application. It's not as if, okay, if we don't have the information, we'll wait and then we'll get it some tomorrow afternoon. This instant down the line, we realized that many different types of companies really needed that same ability. So it wasn't just a Gillette-specific need for PLM, and at the time, a lot of PLM systems started coming into being to identify that same exact issue. So going forward, many different types of companies and different types of products have chosen webtech to be able to manage their product lifecycle. Now, a few of the questions that we'll get often are, why do I need a PLM? How is that different than, let's say, my ERP 100 or my MAS 90 or whichever ERP system I have? I've got a bill of materials program there, so why do I need a PLM in addition to that? And the answer is, when you're entering into a typical ERP system, you're entering static data, meaning if I've got a new component, I enter that into my bill of materials, and now my bill of materials is updated. There aren't any mechanisms to automatically email out to, let's say 4 or 5 other people on a team that this new component was added to the bill, it's been changed. Or let's say ECO management, when you're changing a bill and you require a change order, and having that, again, communicated out to whoever needs to know. So in essence, a PLM is a more fluid type system where all the changes that are occurring are triggering either notifications or actions within the system. So for example, if I need a new part and I need to source it, I can, on my bill of materials, I can enter the request for a new part and have that kick off a workflow, rather than doing that outside the system, and then once I find the part, I find the supplier, then I just go and update my bill of materials. So it allows you to continue doing your process, but yet also be able to track and notify people of what's going on. That leads into the next question: how much of your process is managed through any type of system, or it's all occurring offline. And what happens typically is there's a huge process that's occurring outside of any system that is resting with the individuals that are doing those actions. And once you get the job done at the end of the day, but there's really no history of how you got it done. So if you need to replicate that same effort again, it's a whole new learning process. The next question is, what is the cost of lost opportunities? We were at a prospect about a week ago, and they had actually just lost close to $1 million order because they didn't receive their samples in time to get them out to the client. And they just didn't have any tracking of it. When the original project was kicked off, everybody knew what they needed to do. They sent out emails. They had a tracking spreadsheet, and it just fell through the cracks. And nobody realized until it was too late. It's really hard to put a number on these opportunities often, but in that case, it was pretty clear. You just can't get the order if you don't have the samples. The next question is, how would speeding up time to market help your sales? And that's again, it's not something that can necessarily get a dollar value attached to it, but certainly if you can get your products out to market faster than your competitors, you've gained an advantage. And even more severe is, what is the cost of production errors? If an engineering change had taken place and it just wasn't communicated, and so they go ahead and they start producing with a wrong part or wrong specs or what have you, what does that cost now to change over or even scrap those products that were made in error? And then lastly, how many hours are spent tracking Excel spreadsheets? It seems that people use Excel as kind of an electronic piece of paper to keep track of tasks and workflow, and it's really not intended for that. Excel was a spreadsheet program at its heart, and was really designed to keep track of accounting and numbers and that type of information. It's not a database product. It's not meant to manage your workflow. It's meant to give you a place to really electronically record and do calculations on numbers. So what happens is you've got a piece of paper that's really being managed by one or two people, constantly updating it for their own use, to automatically notify, to automatically check. Let's say you entered something incorrectly into Excel will know, and then that error can just get replicated further on. Now the next question is, why choose webtech as your PLM? It is fully integrated with Sage products, very cost effective. With webtech, the scale is there for a small enterprise from even 3 users all the way up to hundreds of users, and pricing is based on user. So it's very cost effective for even a small implementation. And in fact, implementation is very fast, and you get immediate results. You're not talking about 6 months or a year to be up and running. It's more like a couple of weeks, or maybe a month or two, depending on how large your organization is. And then webtech is very flexible. One of the main limitations of most systems are they're designed for a specific industry or for a specific type of product, and they're inflexible. So you end up having to incur customizing charges, or use a field for something that it wasn't really intended to do. That being said, though, if anything does need to be customized within webtech, it is fully customizable to whatever your needs might be. Now this slide is the webtech platform, an organization chart of where we start, and you can see the different colored blocks. Typically, we'll start off with a project, and that project would be developing a single product or multi-products. It could be even tied to a CRM. So if you've got a meeting with a prospective client, that can be a project that attaches to product development. And you'll notice a project can have its own costs, documents, attributes, and even a project blog for communication back and forth. The project would then lead into a number of tasks associated with that project. And we'll show this in the demo soon. You can have a bill of materials also attached to a project. And within that bill of materials, you can have ECOs, PO requests, documents, even customer service cases, and items that link up to that bill of materials. You'll notice on the bottom left there are notifications. That notification system is throughout. So it's not attached to a specific module or a specific screen. Basically, anywhere in the system, anything that changes or any criteria can kick off a notification. Now, one of the questions we get very often is, well, how is the webtech technology set up for today's day? And we made it very modular so that we've got a presentation layer which can be either a web browser on any device, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari, PC, Mac, any of the iPads or any other tablet, anything that can run a web browser interface can run webtech without any third-party controls or add-ins. The benefit of doing that is that as new devices come about, we don't really have to change the core of the program. We just need to change the presentation layer to make sure it works with that device. So the next layer, where the business logic is contained, we can tweak or customize that business logic layer without having to really make a change to the core of the program. One of the issues that people will run into a lot with other softwares is they buy a program, they need it customized, and as soon as they customize it, they lose their updates, maintenance releases, and such. So the way we've got the program organized is we can make changes to the business logic layer without affecting the database layer or the global functions, and that allows us to roll out changes even if you've had it customized. And the other thing you'll notice on this slide is the integration with Sage's ERP systems is, click a button or push or pull data. Now this is just a quick slide on the webtech team. We've got offices in New York and development offices throughout the world. You've got the ability to gain support through New York, but if you happen to be in a different time zone or a different geographic area, we can also support you that way. I touched on this earlier with mobile device support. We're really able to push this application out to an iPad. You can run it on an iPhone. Some of the screens are a little bit small as far as data entry on a phone, but if you needed to look up data or get notifications, any type of phone, smartphone today will run tech. As far as integration with Sage products, here's a slide where we're showing the Sage 100 ERP integration. Again, we do it at the database level, so the native tables from Sage are linked to the webtech database, and we can actually populate data straight into the database. They'll show up on your regular Sage 100 forms, and again, we can read data back from Sage into webtech. Now, just a quick case study on using Excel versus PLM for an ECO. Let's say, for example, you've got an Excel bill of materials, and now you've got inventory that you need to phase out. Well, Excel's not going to be able to help you with that. With webtech, if you've got inventory that needs to be phased out, you can enter a discontinued date, a sell-off date, and webtech will automatically adjust that bill of materials as that date comes around, and also notify if, let's say, a number of people need to know that we've got to use up all of these components. It can notify them of that in advance. So what you might need to do in the Excel case is find the Excel file on a server. Let's say somebody else has got it open. You'd have to call or email them and have them close it. You make your changes to the Excel sheet. You'd have to compose an email or maybe another Excel sheet with what you're changing, the effectivity dates and such. How you'd even manage that on Excel would be a question. And now email that out. You'd have to source the new part and also see where that existing part, where else that might be used. So hunt down through your other Excel sheets what other BOMs might need to be affected. So that entire process within Excel is obviously time-consuming and error-prone. When you've got a PLM system such as webtech, it's an automatic. webtech will do all of that work for you. All you need to do is go into the bill, either create your ECO, or if an ECO is not required, just make the change and have webtech do the rest. Now the other benefit over an Excel sheet is within webtech we've got a permission subsystem. So for every process, you can determine that this user can access, let's say, bill of materials. But further than that, you can say, well, they can add new items. They can only view only. They can only update existing. They can, let's say, add, update, but they can't delete. All those permissions down to the object level for a user or a group are built into the system, where with an Excel sheet, you've basically just got an Excel sheet. And then within the system as well, you've got the ability to create user teams. What that does for you is you can create a user team of, let's say, 3 or 4 people that are assigned to a project. And when anything in that project changes, those users are automatically notified. So you don't have to even think about who else do I need to know? Do I need to know about this change? Just automatically have webtech push that change out for you. And then when you're creating a project, typically projects are similar in nature. So I know if I'm going to create a new product, I have 6 steps or 8 steps that I need to accomplish. Now I may have a few more, a few less for each individual project, but typically the same steps will occur in repetition in different projects. So you can set up project defaults for different project types within webtech, and every time you create a new project of that type, it will automatically seed that project with the tasks for you. So it just cuts down on the manual effort of setting up a new project. And finally, as far as notifications, webtech will automatically email out notifications as well as flag them in the system. And finally, in the customers, the projects, tasks module, parts, bill of materials, vendors, and customer service cases, the blog subsystem exists. So you can continue to work on your projects and maintain a blog of all the communications back and forth. Now this does integrate with email. So if somebody is not on the system, they're not excluded. They'll still be able to blog through email, but it does give you a central location to record all of the communications and changes and actions that are happening within your project. Now I'm going to go and actually log into the webtech system so you can get an idea of what the user interface looks like, and we'll navigate around a little bit. Now once I log in, I'll see my dashboard um, or my home screen. And what this is showing me is all of the open tasks that are assigned to me. So I've got a quick view at what I need to accomplish for today or what's on my calendar going forward. I'll also see alerts. So if I set up an alert that I need to know if any of my tasks fall behind, right there on my dashboard, it'll show me that this task is falling behind, even if it's not assigned to me, but I need to know about it because it will affect one of my tasks. I can set up an alert for those tasks. And then further down on the screen, I can look at all the comments going back and forth on the tasks or the project that I'm currently working on. So I've got one quick dashboard where I can see really what I need to know for going forward on my day. Now here's a typical project screen, and again, these the fields and the layout of the screen, all of that is able to be defined based on a project type. So every project may not have all of these fields. They may have a completely different set of fields. That's all been built into the templates that webtech provides. So I can have any different type of projects, different number of templates, depending on what my needs are. But just as a typical case, I've got a project here to build a vehicle. On my header tab here, I've got who the project manager is, which team it's assigned to, the current status, description, project type, the date we started the project, and such. As I go down to my tasks view, I've got a listing of all the tasks that are assigned to this project, which user they're assigned to, a description when it's due, and the current status. And from here, I can drill into any of these tasks. I can pop it open into a new window. I can open it up in place. Let's just open this one in a new window. And I can pull up the details for that task when it's due, what notes have been attached to it. We can also attach documents and trigger actions. Oops, we popped it behind. And back on my main screen, I do task inquiries. So if, for example, I wanted to look up a specific task type, show me all the tasks that are open, show me all the tasks that are pending, show me by task type where I'm at. All of those different options are here on my task inquiry screen, and I can filter, produce reports, and drill into individual tasks from the screen. Now the next stage in most people's process would be creating a bill of materials. You'll notice here this is somewhat of a detailed bill of materials. We obviously don't have to have all of these columns visible. So for example, markup and standard cost and price, those types of fields can be hidden based on a user profile, or if that part of your process is really handled within your ERP, they can be hidden globally. And you notice further down, we can have all of our change orders tracked here, what type of change it is, which part was changed, the change date, the status, and even the cost. So we have the ability to charge back a client for change order and costs. We can record those and kick off a billing task. Now, what also can happen is if we entered a new part in our bill of materials, we can kick off a purchase request. So for example, we've created these new parts. We've assigned a vendor for those parts, but we don't have any samples. We don't have anything in inventory that we can draw from. The system can automatically create a new task for a purchase request, and that can go to a specific approver. We can also have different levels of approval permission set up. So for example, somebody might have permissions to purchase a product between, let's say $1 and $1,000, but anything over $1,000 needs to go to a manager. So we've got approval levels set up so that different individuals can have their own approvals. We also have a reassign function. So if, let's say, I know I'm the one who needs to approve this, but I'm going to be out for 10 days on vacation, I can assign my approval tasks to somebody else so it doesn't just sit in abeyance until I come back. And one of the other features of webtech that's not in a typical PLM is customer service. So for example, if you've got a build and that build is sent out to any number of customers, they can record their customer service cases here, and we can follow using again the same notification system as the rest of the system, and we can push out tasks to service technicians out in the field, internal people that have got service tasks can maintain their tasks on the system, and all of that ties back. So if I wanted to produce a report that says, for this build, how many issues do I have, or for this part, for that matter, how many issues do I have, I can go back and mine all of that data through the system. And in this case, if let's say I've got a few different changes to a shop order, I can also look up what's my history there. Maybe when I changed the part, at some point an issue was created, so we can cross-reference the dates on my customer service cases versus my shop order changes and identify issues that way. And then within the customer service module, I've got the ability here to search by case type. We can have as many different case types as we need. We can search by location, by status, any number of fields to help us identify issues and refine our development process. Again, here's another type of customer service case with some ongoing history. So in this case, we've got a smart card that's failing out in the field. They've opened the case. They sent out a field service technician. The technicians also with a smartphone can check in and check out as they're out in the field and send questions back to the customer service rep, or let's say request a part to be swapped out, take pictures, and also attach those to the case. So there's really a good ability to track the process from the very beginning of development through bill of materials and out into production and out to the field. So hopefully I've given you a good overview of what PLM is, how it might be able to benefit your organization. Obviously, there's a lot more to the system than whatever I've been able to show in this short amount of time. If you look here on the left menu, we've got bill of materials builder. We can copy bill of materials. We can template them. There's quite a bit of functionality that's built into the system. There's a report manager. There's even a logistics module, so we can set up vendor quotes. And even within the parts module, we can have multiple parts from different vendors, different price sheets, and different price levels, as many categories as we need. And all of this within the design process can follow a workflow, and when it gets to the final stage, we can push all of that information into your ERP system. So any of the Sage products we can integrate with and push that information in, so there's not a duplication of efforts. All of this information that's built up on our side, and then you've got to do a manual keyed entry of essentially the same thing into your ERP system. So that's the overall. Hopefully, this gives you a good idea of what webtech PLM can do, and we'd be happy to arrange individual demos of one of the modules or all of the modules and show something more specific to your business. At this point, I'd like to ask if there are any questions. If you could type them into your chat window, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Or if we don't get any additional questions, we'll wrap up at this stage.
And I've also unmuted the phones as well. So if you have any questions, you can also ask them out loud here.
Okay.
The one question that I see coming through was actually specifically about X3. Was this compatible with X3?
Yes, it is compatible with X3. You'll notice that we are web-based, but in the background we're a SQL database, and so we are able to integrate with X3 at the database level. So that, yeah, good question. Yes, it's compatible with X3 as well as all of the other Sage ERP products. And another question we get often enough is, what about some of the older versions of, let's say, Mass 90 or Mass 200 or Mass 500? We've been integrating with Sage products going back to even more than 10 years. And even in cases where people have got some of the older Mass 90 that are using pervasive databases through ODBC, we can integrate with that as well. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thank you all for attending, and we'll wrap this up here. You've got my contact information. If you have any additional questions or needs after this demo, we'd be again very happy to arrange the individual demos at your convenience. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. And with that, we'll